Okay, coming along really nicely. So we've got the exhaust pipes done, we've done the cowl flaps, we've done some of the burnt metal areas or heated metal areas on the back of the exhaust. We'll show you those all in a moment. First of all, we need to actually do the propellers. So this is my sort of step-by-step guide to doing props. So to start off with, as you can see, we have a very nice satin black prop, which is basically our base. Okay, so if you look at most props, they tend to look like this. Now it doesn't matter if you're going to go off and weather them later, you want a nice good strong colour. So for this one, actually it's my favourite black colour around at the moment is this, which is Tamir's Lacquer Paint or LP5. Okay, this is the semi-gloss black. There's the compressor right on cue. Okay, this particular paint is a really nice in-between colour, as in it's got that nice sort of satin feel, but it's shiny enough to be very, you know, basically convincing. So I like to use it on chassis of vehicles, on props, things like that, because it just seems to be that in-between colour that balances that thing about being black and not being an off black. And by that I always mean, you hear me talk about never using black or white. Okay, I like to use off blacks like rubber blacks or NATO blacks, things like that. This one is one of the few exceptions I think you can actually get away with it. So anyway, this has had a coat of that, allowed to dry for around about half an hour, and it's absolutely good to go. Okay, so the first thing is we want to mask up the actual tips. Now obviously you've got the, in our case it's going to be yellow tips on the outside of these, so I basically eyeball it. So we just put it flat down there, and then on one side you just come along and then pinch to the back. So you got a pinch area on one side and the other, and then you just crimp both sides. That seals that end off. Okay, and we just do the others like so. Okay, so you just come in happy with how it actually is, and then you just wrap one side to the other, and then you can balance, and you can roughly work out, but make sure you just slightly fold each side. Otherwise what can happen is that you can get a little bleed through, goes down the side. Okay, so again, eyeballing it up, usually around about 2 mil. Okay, and then you're happy, turn over and then go up each side. So you just crimp around one side and on the other. Okay, and we're good to go. Now our props, some of them you can get away with, just have a little bit of yellow on the end. Okay, if it's got different things, it's like white with bits of red, then obviously do the white first, then do the red afterwards, things like that. But in our case, what we've actually got is actually a 3 sort of tone area on the spinner here at the front. So you've got the sort of gearbox at the back here. That's going to be done in a flat metal. Basically we're going to use Tamir's LP11, okay, which is this one. Okay, it's a nice flat aluminium colour. Okay, the front end we're going to chrome it, which we'll show you about in a moment. So you've got this nice sort of spinner cap on the front here. That's going to be like it's been polished, so we use that for a little bit of chrome. So what we need to do is mask up down in here, and that's where the old Infini cutting boards come in absolutely fantastic. So we just take a little bit of tape. Okay, and we just grab it up like this. Okay, and then what we're going to do is put it right up into the edge. So to try and put in one end would be a right pain. So what we tend to do is we put one end like this, slightly go over, and then this side we're going to pull him upwards, which then allows this side to come down. So if you wanted to, you could use a pair of tweezers. Okay, so you just grab your other end and then it will fold and pull round everything. So make sure it's gone underneath any nuts and bolts that are around on there, and then it just comes up here, and then this other side folds up, and then what you do, you just come in with your tape. Okay, going in the same sort of direction as well, because it just makes things easier. Okay, and then this one will just fold over the end, and again make sure you crimp up and down, so you've completely sealed off the entire black area. So this means now we can spray this bit in grey, okay, and we can do the tip in yellow up like that, okay. So instead of doing all of those, we've got this one done already. All right, so to start with, we're going to spray the silver colour. Now, important thing to remember, if you're spraying any type of metallic, make sure you either completely clean out your airbrush between coats, which can be a bit of a problem. If you have got 2 airbrushes, it makes it even better. So what we've got here, I've got one airbrush with has got my metal colours in it, and then we've got one with actually normal flat colours like black, for instance, and also spraying yellows because we don't want any obviously contamination with the silver. Okay, so this has just got that metal flat aluminium type colour. So we go right over just down in there, and then make sure you come from the back side, so you're coming in from all the angles right the way around it. Okay, just like that. Okay, and then I've got another airbrush just here. I've got the airbrush to stand up. There we go. And then in here, what we've got is some LP8. Okay, now the great thing with using lacquer paints is it dries very, very quickly. So what we can do is, okay, dusty coat, leave it, move away. Turn that down, it's a little bit high. Leave it. Because you're only doing the tip, so slightly spraying downwards. Okay, and then we're going to do the backs. Okay, and just down in here. And then using the air just to dry off, we're just going to go round, and then we'll come in, drying down, second coat. And this may take quite a few little coats, but just little and often. And just generally, we're just going to work our way round, building up and building up and building up until it is all completely done. Once you are, it should look something like this. Okay, so this is our one done, all like this. So what we can actually do is just unmask. So just going to be very, very careful and coming in the middle. Okay. And just be careful how you unmask, because sometimes the tape can be very strong. Another little tip you can do is to cut down the side of the tape like this. Okay, so you can actually just pull down one half of the tape, but don't go all the way to the end, because make sure you pull it downwards towards you, otherwise you might bend your tape on the top. Okay. Let's do this one. So normally you would make sure your hands are all nice and clean, and obviously all things I'm not. Okay. And again, it's another bonus to using lacquer paints, is obviously they dry a lot quicker, but normally let these totally dry off before you come in and do this, because otherwise you can end up making a mess. Okay, so that's those done, and then what you can do is you can unmask. Your middles. Like so. Last one, you think I'd have one of these lined up ready. But being the true pro. Okay, and that is your prop done, just like that. Very, very simple. So all we're going to do is just going to let this nose section down in here just dry for a little bit. And what we'll do is I'll get the other one done, get this one finished off, we'll get it sprayed up as well. We'll come back and we'll do the chrome masking for the front. And then obviously what you need then is to decal it. And then obviously you've got some of the decals which will go on the actual prop for the manufacturer. Once those are done, you can give it a satin coat right the way over it to seal that one in, and then you can do further weather it. So if you wanted to, you could give it metallic scrub, which is basically dark iron brush over it, which is what these will get in a minute. Okay, and then that way it's a way of weathering down, or if you wanted to, you could go through chipping and stuff. But that's really just to show you how to get a nice defined prop area right the way through. Okay, so pushed on a little bit. What you can see down in here, we've got the decals all on, and we've given it a quick gloss coat over the top just to seal all this down and make it ready to go. So the last thing we need to do down in here is give this a very nice chrome front. So as you know, I'm a big fan of this stuff, Molotov chrome pen. What I actually do is I have this in here and this is dried, and then I've just give it a tiny little bit of lacquer thinners in here, and that enables it to sort of reactivate and come back to life. Okay, so what we've got here is it just on a brush, and then all we do, put my magnifiers on so I can see. Okay, so you've got to be quite generous with this. All right, so when you're coming in, we'll start around the front. Okay, and then we just flood it onto the surface. Okay, and make sure you've got enough to flood, because it needs to self-level. If it can't self-level, you end up with it looking very gritty. So you want to just make sure you got enough for it to self-level, literally like that. Okay, leave it on its back, and that way it'll dry, and then you should end up with something like that. As you can see, beautiful chrome effect. And to be honest with you, we've done all the others just like this, so they're ready to go. So all they need now technically is just a satin coat right over them, just to dull them down just a little bit, because now they come a little bit sharp. But the thing is, the carrier film was showing up far too strong on those decals, so we needed to bury those down into there. But again, we can probably do that with a little bit of a dry brush just to wear it down as we make our way on. So what we're going to do, we're going to let those dry for a good couple of days. That's the thing with this stuff, you can't actually use it or touch it for a good couple of days. It's dry to touch, as in glance touching, within about an hour or two, but if you hold it, you will leave fingerprints on it. It needs a couple of days to go off, and obviously if you're going to install those onto the front and you put your finger onto it, you're going to leave a fingerprint. You have been warned, okay? The other thing as well, it hates lacquer thinners. You put lacquer thinners to it, it turns back to a liquid immediately and flows off and starts to make its way through. So there we go, we're going to let those dry, we're going to have a bit of a clear out, and then we can get the engines, exhausts, the superchargers installed, and all the small bits and pieces. Okay, so engine, as we can see down in here, is all painted. I've literally just mounted it up onto here just to make it a little bit easier to work with and see. So as you can see, if you wanted to have that sort of factory fresh, or, you know, proper Warbird look, you might just want to end it right there. But from our point of view, what we want to do is just do a little bit of weathering for this. So again, this is personal to me for my particular aircraft I'm building. If you wanted to take this a lot further, or obviously you could keep it nice factory fresh, but what I like to do is give it what I call a metallic scrub. Now, you would have seen me do this on armour, black helicopters, things like that. Basically, it's taking this stuff, which is dark iron. Okay, so it's number 214. The great thing about this is that because it's a pigment, it's almost like blending in, but you can do it quite lightly as well. So if we just whip the top off here, what I always do is keep these, as you can probably see on the bristles here, very much metallic anyway, but we are going to need a little bit more. So we're just going to load up the brush onto this, okay, hardly anything at all, and then we're going to rub all of this off down in here, as you can see. And you can probably see this will turn silvery colour down here as well. Okay, so once we've got most of that off, what we can actually do then is start to give this a little bit of a rub. So I'm going to put my magnifiers on just so I can see it a little bit better. Okay, so starting on the inside, we are literally just going to give this a slight rub. So obviously the leading edge is going to get a little bit more. You can see we've got a little bit down in here. Okay, so we're just causing a little bit of sharpness around, and then the tip as well is going to get a little bit. Okay, and then just hold it down. We're going to go right the way across the prop, and we're just dragging down just so this leading edge gets, it looks like it's rubbed slightly, and as you can see, got a tiny little bit of rub on here, and that's literally all I want on this one. I don't want to go too heavy, you know, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a show-bird, but it's a great way of weathering up the tip. But if you wanted to, you'd obviously keep going at this a little bit more. Okay, I'm just going to go around to this side, go right the way over the tip. And this is one of those things, because it's a metallic, depending on how much you actually pull it down will depend on how much is left behind. Okay, so just a great way of just doing this. And also, because this black tip has got a slight edge to it as well, you can go over it just to give it a nice metallic black edge. Okay, and that is literally all our little warbird is going to get. Now if you wanted to go further, obviously you could come along here with some oils, and if you've got a little bit of grey oil you can just come across with these just a little bit, and what I'll do is I'll just grab a little bit to show you. Okay, so what we got down in here is the Abteilung, a little bit of neutral grey, and then over on here we're just going to put a tiny little bit onto a piece of paper. Okay, then we're going to take one of our nice dry brushing or weathering type brushes. Okay, so then we've got this guy just down in here, so then what we do, we're just going to pick up a couple of little bits just on the end of this one, and this is quite a distressed bristle. Okay, and then what we do is with these little bits of grey on here, we're just going to pull it across, and then again, because this is gone over like a satin finish on here, hopefully you can see it's starting to pick up and it's starting to drag. It's very difficult to see because, as I say, you want this to be definitely an afterthought versus a modern look. We just try a little bit more, okay? Okay, so that's the type of look we're getting. Again, this is one of those that looks better in my eye than it does to probably you. But if we do a before and after, hopefully you'll get the look. But again, airflow, so pulling down and away from you, just so it comes round. Okay, and then we're just going to grab a few more. Okay, with each pass. And if it's a little bit heavy, you can just take it off. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go a little bit heavier than normal. Okay, so you just get these little streaks, but you want a good old distressed somewhat area. So there we go, there you can see that's coming to life. Now this one down in here is a little bit too strong, so we're using a clean brush and we're just going to lightly wipe it away just a little bit there, because to be honest it was too much on there. Okay, and that way we can just come back in. So you're sort of just dabbing and scratching at it, so then that way it's all pulled through. Okay, and you can go back over some just to take them down just a little bit, and others you want to add. Again, just make sure you flick all the way to the bottom, and then that way your prop is done and it's lightly weathered. But if you wanted to do more, obviously you'd go with a lot more and a lot more dragging down and things like that. But hopefully you can see how well that works. So if I just grab another engine, okay, that's one weathered and one that's not weathered, and that way you can see exactly the differences between the two. Okay, so you say if you wanted to go with a nice shiny one, then obviously you go for this one. If you wanted something a little bit more dirty, you'll go for that one. And that is literally it. Very straightforward about doing pop. So, recap. Semi-gloss black, satin black, nice good shine coat onto that one. Get that one in there, mask it up, get your paintwork done. Think about your layers, think how you're doing. So the chrome one, obviously you want to keep the chrome, so we don't want to touch the chrome or anything else like that. So that obviously goes in last. Yellow tips, light coats, build it up quite slowly. Might take 5 coats, let them dry between each one. As soon as they go wet, you might get leakage and then it runs down and goes through literally like that. Decal, seal, and then you can weather and you're good to go. So hopefully that clears up a few little myths about doing props.